Hi, I'm Cindy Winget. I'm the author of some Gothic horror mashups, and welcome to my channel. So today we're going to be talking about Emily Henry. She is one of my favorite romance authors. She writes contemporary stories, which sometimes can be problematic for me, and I'll tell you why in a bit. But she has a brand new book that just came out that's called Great Big Beautiful Life. So in this book, we're following these two writers, and they are both journalists, and they want to write this biography about this famous woman named Margaret Ives. And she's been missing out of the public eye for like 20 years. Nobody knew where she disappeared to. But our main character has tracked her down and finally figured out that she's been in this little small town in Georgia the whole time. But when she gets there, she discovers that this other guy is also there. And they're both vying to write this book about this woman. And so the woman's like, well, how about for a whole month, I talk to both of you, and then at the end of that month, I'll decide who I want to write my story. So they agreed to this. And then, at first there's like this competition between them, but then sparks fly and they begin to fall in love. So this is pretty chunky. It's like over 400 pages. So I don't know. I think that's a little bit long for a romance in my own opinion, but I haven't read it yet, so we'll see if there's a reason for the length. But anyways, I'm going to go ahead and get some breakfast and take the dog for a walk, and then I will get reading, and I'll let you know when I have something to say. I am back with an update for Big Beautiful Life, and I'm about a third of the way in, and I was a little bit nervous because there's actually the story of Margaret within this book, so it's like a book within a book type of deal, and I heard a lot of chatter about that being kind of boring and people weren't really into it. And so I was a little bit nervous for that. But luckily, I actually find it fascinating. So I'm actually enjoying those parts of the book. So that was very relieving. So this is a Grumpy Sunshine type trope where the girl is very optimistic and very happy, and the guy's kind of more gruff and serious and different things, which if done well, I really do like that trope. Sometimes it can be a little bit grating, so it just kind of depends on the execution. I find it a little bit forced in this book, if I'm being honest, but it's still fairly soon into the book, so I'll hold off my true opinions on that till I get a little bit farther. And this reminds me a lot of Beach Read. So if you've read that book by Emily Henry, it kind of has the same dynamic where you have these two authors, coexisting with each other or whatever. So it's giving me Beach Read vibes, but I'm not liking this one quite as much as I did that one, but we shall see. So the first kiss has actually already happened. But for some reason, this is what bothers me about contemporary stories that I told you I would talk to you about earlier. Because as predicted, because I knew this was going to happen, contemporary romance is more about lust rather than actual romance. Emily Henry has this scene where he kisses her hand and they are talking, and it's very sweet. And to me, that's romance. I want to be wooed. But there's always there's never just a first kiss. It's always oh, we kissed and the sparks flew, and now it instantly has to turn into sexual stuff, which I just don't feel like is realistic. I don't know, maybe you guys have different experiences, but in my life, with my dating and with my friends dating and people around me, I don't know, it was never oh, we kissed and now he's touching my private parts. Like, I don't know. I just find it a little bit strange that it just instantly goes there. That's not romantic to me. Like, I don't know. That bothers me more than it should. I'm just not a smut reader. I'm just not. I find it extremely boring and unrealistic because, like I said, they just barely met. They just barely had this first kiss. And I don't need it to just instantly go there, you know? Like, give me a chance to feel something for these characters, feel the chemistry before we just instantly get there, you know. And he kind of blames her, like, well, you don't wear pants, you're always wearing skirts or dresses. And I'm like, okay, so you have to put your hand up her skirt because she's wearing a skirt? Like, that's not very gentlemanly. Like, I don't know, that bothers me. But I do know it's kind of true. Like, if you're show skinned, guys do feel like they can touch it. Like, I have seen that in real life, but I don't know. It's just when I'm reading a fictional book, though, it kind of gives me that ick feeling, and I don't like it. I much prefer reading Regency and Victorian era romances because in those types of books, it seems like it's more about the romance, and that's what I want when I read a romance. I want to have the journey of them discovering that they're in love. You know, when I read Pride and Prejudice, if it was just like Darcy and Elizabeth, they kissed once in the beginning and then it's all about the sex. Like, no, I want the romance. I want them to discover that they like each other. I want them, you know, I want that happily ever after ending where that's the point of the book is will they or won't they get together? That's what I like in a romance. And so I kind of have a hard time with contemporary romances because it seems like all the books coming out nowadays, it's just like, let's get to the smut. And I find smut very, very boring. So I don't know. I didn't mean to go on this big long rant about it. So I apologize for that, but I'm just not into that. But, you know, it is what it is. I expected it. I mean, it's in pretty much every contemporary romance that comes out nowadays. So it's not like I didn't see it coming. But anyways, so far, I like this. I'm not in love with it, but I do like it. I'll update you again when I'm probably about halfway through. Okay, I'm back with another update. I have made it halfway through Big Beautiful Life, and this is not a mark against this book. This is simply an observation. But in this book, Emily Henry decides to emphasize a lot of words. You know, when they italicize words so that you'll emphasize it, she does that a lot. And, you know, there's nothing wrong with that. Like, that's a perfectly fine thing to do. But it was done so often that it kind of took me out of the book because that's what I started to notice instead of the story. But again, not a mark against it, just an observation I thought I'd let you know about. So, the romance in this is okay so far. I'm not like super shipping this couple. I don't think there's a whole ton of chemistry between them, but I'm still very much enjoying the story within a story that Margaret is telling, which is like a family drama. I'm very much enjoying that part of the book, and so it keeps me invested and it keeps me reading. There is one part involving a snake. If you've read this book, you know what I'm talking about. That I thought was so funny, but kind of sweet. And it does involve our main characters, Hayden and Alice, and I thought that was a sweet scene between them. But outside of that, like, I'm just not vibing too much with the romance portion of this book, unfortunately. And there is still some steamy scenes between our two characters. It seems a little bit tame compared to her other books that I've read. Like, so it's not like super in your face or anything like that. But I find it a little bit strange still because they're vying for this job. And so Hayden starts to feel like, you know, she's going to resent me if I end up getting this job, which is, you know, perfectly valid. But at the same time, he tells her, you know, we can't have sex because you're not going to like me in a couple weeks type thing. And then proceeds to do everything else besides, you know, the main event or whatever, which I was like, okay. Like, you're okay with doing everything else, but not going the distance because you don't think she's going to like you. Like, that seems like mixed messaging to me. And also, like, you're just setting yourself up for frustration and you know it. And I don't know, that just kind of annoyed me, and it's happened more than once. And I'm like, that's just dumb. Either do it or don't do it. You know, like, that just kind of bothered me. I do have a theory involving Hayden. I don't want to say what that theory is because it's potentially a spoiler, but I think there's something else going on with him, so we shall see if I'm right. I will probably come back when I've finished the book. Hi, Gidget. You want to smell first? Yeah. I just washed my hands. Can you smell my soap? Oh, he's so cute. Yes, he's so cute. Bye-bye. Okay, so I am here with my last update of Big Beautiful Life. And I feel like this felt more like a literary women's lit type of book rather than a romance, because the romance aspect of it was just so lackluster in my opinion. So they continued to just have the smutty scenes be pretty much the relationship for the rest of the book, which again, in my opinion, is very boring. And the only real tension is, you know, the fact that they don't know who's going to win making this book. But I just feel like that was kind of a weak excuse. Like, it's understandable, but at the same time, they both know that this is a thing. Like, they're both aware of it. And so why is it such a big deal? Like, I don't know. And again, I just find that kind of story boring because the banter between the characters and the tension and the are they going to get together in the end? That's what I care about when I read romance. And so reading their type of story where they're just like together the entire time already, I just find that very, very boring. So really, I only finished reading this because of the family saga aspect. That's the part that I enjoyed about this book the most. I did find it a little bit hard to keep track of sometimes because it starts with her great-grandfather and then her grandfather and then her dad and then her, and sometimes I forget like who was who. But that was the most fascinating part of this book, and I have seen reviews comparing it to The Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo. I have personally not read that book, and so for me it reminded me more of The Heiress by Rachel Hawkins. So, you know, you have these interlude chapters just talking about her family history, but I really enjoyed those aspects. I really enjoyed all the side stuff that was going on, like with our main character and her mom. She does have a few friends that she texts that I feel like were just thrown in there. I'm not really sure why the friend group was even in this book, if I'm being honest. But yeah, I just thought the romance aspect was pretty lacking, but I did like the other part of the book, which makes it hard to rate because on the one hand, I really enjoyed it. And on the other hand, I thought for a romance, it was kind of a letdown. So, I don't know. I'm thinking maybe a 3.5. I do feel like this book was too long. Like, those last 150 pages were kind of hard to get through. So, I don't know if I can give this the full 4 stars. It definitely wasn't 5 stars. So yeah, I think I'm gonna land on a 3.5. So now it's time to do my ranking of all of her books to let you know how I feel about her books, and you can see whether they are the same as yours or if they're completely different from your opinions, Or maybe you haven't read Emily Henry and this is a guide to which books to start with and which ones you could maybe skip. So my number one Emily Henry book is going to be Book Lovers. I absolutely loved this book. I'll admit I had a little bit of a hard time getting into it at first because our main character was a little bit like grumpier and I had a hard time relating to her. But once I got in, I loved this book. I could not stop reading it. I had to keep going and keep going and keep going. So I highly recommend this one. This is my all-time favorite Emily Henry book. So this is about a woman who is a literary agent and she loves her sister very much. And I love their relationship in this book. And she decides to go away for this month-long, like, sisterly vacation to this small town called Sunshine Falls. And while she's there, she meets this editor. Well, she doesn't meet him because I guess they've met before in the past because they're both in the literary world. But they never really liked each other that much. But she keeps bumping into him. And so eventually, you know, love blossoms. But yeah, I really enjoyed this one a lot. I really thought it was a good time. And then following very close behind that one is Funny Story. This is her book that came out last year. And again, I had the same feeling as Book Lovers where I just did not want to put it down. I couldn't stop reading it. I really loved it. The male main character in this book, I kind of had to warm up to him a little bit because when we first meet him, he's kind of like this laid back, I'm just gonna sit in my room all day smoking marijuana type vibes, which is just not my thing. But really it was just because he had just gone through a tough breakup and that really wasn't who he was. And so once I got past that initially, I really loved this man. And so this is about two people whose her fiance and his girlfriend, they both break up with them within a week because they actually fell in love with each other. It sounds like they had already gone out in the past and then they rekindled their love, you know, and discovered that, you know, we had been in love all the time. And so that left these two people with broken hearts, and she doesn't have anywhere to live because she was living with her fiance. And so she goes to him and is like, hey, you know it's a little bit awkward, but I don't have a place to stay. Can I just be your roommate? And so he's like, sure, fine, whatever, I don't care. So they become roommates with each other and then they start to fall in love. So I really liked that dynamic. It added some tension and some, you know, natural barriers and different things, but then they also have the close proximity. And I just really enjoyed this book a lot. I found myself thinking about it when I wasn't reading it and wanting to get back to it, which is always the mark of a good book, and I highly recommend it. And then next we have Beach Read, and this is the one that the current read reminded me of. So we have these two authors, and they're both at this beach trying to write their next book. And he normally writes thrillers and she normally writes romance novels. They're both struggling with their next book that they're trying to write. And so, he doesn't write thrillers. No, I don't think they're thrillers. I think they're just like not romance. You know, like they tend to be more depressing, drama-filled, heavy reads compared to, you know, the rom-com genre that she writes. Oh, I keep pointing to the wrong person. I guess this is the girl. Anyways, so they're both having creative ruts, and so they decide to pull each other out of it. And so he's going to try and write something happy, and she's going to try and write like the next American novel that's, you know, a little bit more heavy and serious than what she normally writes. And so they go on like these field trips together where she's showing him great spots where a rom-com could blossom, you know, like perfect dates that they could be on. And then he in turn takes her, you know, different places to kind of help each other get out of their writing slumps. So I really enjoyed this one a lot. I thought it was really cute and really fun. This is the first Emily Henry book that I ever read, and it cemented her as a autobiography author for me. And then next on my list would be The Great Big Beautiful Life. So even though the romance itself was kind of lackluster, I didn't really care for it a whole ton. Like, I didn't hate it, but I wasn't like completely enamored with it either. But I really enjoyed Margaret's story, and I really enjoyed the twist at the end, which I was right, by the way, on my theory. So yay me. But anyways, so I thought it was a good book. I just thought it was too long, and I thought the romance could have been a little bit better. but I did enjoy reading it, so this would come next. And then we have Happy Place, and I kind of feel the same way about this as I do about Big Beautiful Life, where it's not my favorite Emily Henry book, but I did enjoy it for the most part. This is a second chance romance though, and I'm not really interested in second chance romances, but Emily Henry did have fun with it though, and they kind of tease each other, which was fun, because they're actually going to one of their mutual friends' weddings, but their friend group doesn't know that they broke up. And so they don't want to ruin things for their friend, and so they just pretend that they're still together. And so that added a lot of natural tension and, like I said, opportunities to like tease each other, you know? Like she would sit in his lap and stuff. So it was very fun. I don't know, I wasn't completely in love with this book though. Like I enjoyed my time while I was reading it, but when I stopped to reflect back on it later, I'm kind of just feeling meh about it. I feel like I was more invested in the friend group and what was going on with the friends than the actual romance, which is how I felt about her new book. So, you know, she's a good storyteller and she is a really good, strong writer. But in these two particular books, I just was more invested with other things going on than I actually was with the romance, which was a little bit of a bummer, but you know, still enjoyable. And then we have People We Meet on Vacation, and I have actually already given up my copy of this because I did not like this book at all. I ended up DNFing it because it was so boring. I got halfway through and I was just like, nope, I can't do it anymore. So this is a friends to lovers trope, and they go on vacation even though they go like on a yearly vacation together, but they've hit a rough patch in their friendship, and so they didn't think they were going to go on this vacation together, but they decided to do it anyways. And it brings up all these memories about past vacations that they've taken together, and so you get a lot of flashbacks about what they used to do on their vacations. And then, you know, in the present, they're trying to build up that relationship again. But yeah, I just found this one extremely boring. It was just pages upon going on vacation and flashback to another vacation. And I had a hard time keeping all of the timelines straight, if I'm being honest. And I just didn't care. I just was bored. So unfortunately, this one was a miss for me and is at the bottom of this list. So I still really enjoy Emily Henry's books. You know, sometimes the romance hits, sometimes it doesn't. But either way, if the romance isn't like top tier, I still enjoy reading the book for what it is, and I still enjoy the stories, and I still think she's a strong writer. So I will continue to pick up her books in the future. I hope this video was helpful for you, and if you liked it, please give me a thumbs up. Please subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. I post videos every Friday, and I hope to see you in the next one. See ya!